Happy Tuesday, everyone. This is Steve Rustler, founder and president of GovLoop, and I'm very excited that you're joining us today. We have an extra awesome online training. Today it is Data in Action, How Leading Governments Measure Performance. Great topic brought to you by the fine folks at Socrata. I'm really excited. We've brought together some great speakers from government and Socrata to really dive into this topic. And I've seen some of the slides and some of the demos. It's really cool stuff from across the U.S., so I'm really excited to get going. So a little bit of housekeeping before we get into the meat of the content. So if you are a Twitter fan, if you are a Twitterati, we are using the hashtag #PoundGLTrain, #PoundGLTrain. So if you hear a great quote or comment or have a question, throw it up there on #PoundGLTrain. If you are having any technical difficulties during the training, hit the help button located below the slide window. All of you are on various systems at various government agencies, so if you have any questions, hit that help and we'll fix it for you. The goal of these online trainings is really to share case studies across government to help you do your job better, and then really to answer your questions. It's really about helping you. So we're going to save the last 10 to 15 minutes for your questions. So if you would like to submit a question, just look for the Ask a Question box on the console. So ask away, put those questions in, and we'll make sure to save some time and answer those. I also wanted to let you know we will be sending you an email link with the archived version of the training so you can view it again or share it with a colleague. You'll have the slides, so you can take notes if you want, but we'll also be sending you the slides. This is training, so we're going to give you a training certificate so you can show you're awesome at performance. And by attending this training, you are 1 credit towards our GovLoop VIP program. Get cool GovLoop t-shirts, stickers, and career advice. So you are already winning by doing that so far. So my first step today, I'm going to introduce Beth Blauer, who's the director of GovStat. I've known Beth since her great work at State of Maryland, where she ran the state stat for Maryland in the office of Governor Martin O'Malley, that is credited with improving across-the-board outcomes in all areas, especially education, health, public safety, and environment. She's a Maryland grad, has her JD from New York Law School where she was a public interest fellow, and really a visionary in the state stat kind of statistics world that's been a great case study across the U.S. And now in her new role at Socrata as the director of GovStat, she's on the Socrata team helping ensure the company will remain a leader, innovator, and open data movement. Really pushing Socrata to stay ahead of customers' need, forward-thinking solution, and being a well-known proponent of open government data transparency and utilization. So I'm really excited to pass the baton to Beth, who's going to introduce our speakers today and really lead the program. So Beth, thanks for coming. I'll pass the baton to you.
Great. Thanks for having me. Thanks, GovLoop, for having us. Really excited to have you all here. This is a continuation of a series of web conversations that we're having, but it's our first time partnering with GovLoop, so thanks to the GovLoop team. And again, it's GLTrain is the hashtag for those of you who are following along on Twitter. You can also follow us at Socrata. So I'm just really excited to be here on behalf of Socrata, but also to be here with an all-star team of performance management rock stars, in my opinion. Just a little bit of background, which that you have already heard a little bit about. I'm Beth Blauer, and for those of you that don't know me, I'm currently the director of GovStat Socrata, but am sort of positioned to maybe lead this conversation based on my experience working in the state of Maryland, where I had the privilege of serving for Governor Martin O'Malley for about 6 years, where I led the state stat program in the state, oversaw about 85% of the state's budget and a component amount of our workforce through a data-driven performance management program called State Stat. And I also was the director of the Governor's Delivery Unit, which was a outcome-oriented, goal-focused performance management enhancement that we added on to State Stat. And we used, had traditionally used a lot of manual ways of surfacing data onto common platforms. And some of my frustration at the end of the time that I was working in the state of Maryland was that we are sort of focused on using data to drive decision making, but the tools that we had were not reflective of our commitment to actually this approach. And so I started using Socrata's open data catalog to replace some of our older spreadsheet-based tracking. But I wanted to have a curated view and a product that spoke to that desire that would allow me to not just take data and free it and to talk about sort of the operational things that we were doing as a state, moving the state forward on our strategic goals and also on some of the efficiency that we are finding within our government. But I wanted to be able to tell our story in a way that I could do easily, an analyst could do in a sort of turnkey environment. And so I started developing this tool with Socrata. And so today, who we're going to meet are some of our users. So we've been piloting the use of GovStat in a number of different governments, and we've got a great team representing state and local governments, and they have been utilizing the tool, but they are also leaders in performance management. And the focus today is really how they align utilization of the technology to help propel or help create a way for them to move the needle forward in a bunch of really important outcome areas. And Reyna Farrales, who is our first panelist today, actually is the person who prompted this conversation. And I'm really excited that she's here. She's the Deputy County Manager of San Mateo County, California. And she has just absolutely been a leader there in getting the county more data-driven and driving decision-making and evidence. And she's going to talk to you today a little bit about her story. But before we go there is something a little bit new that we're doing, and I think this is something that is inherent to the GovLoop webinars and trainings. But we're going to be asking a series of poll questions today that are going to correspond with the conversation that we're having. And so the format for today is I'm going to ask a poll question today. So the first one you should see on your screen is, are you responsible for creating performance reports for your organization? Within your console, you can respond to this question, and then we'll also be sharing the results of these poll questions. There'll be about 4 questions today throughout our conversation, and then, again, we're really excited for this to be a dialogue with you. And so if there are questions that come up, we ask you to submit them. Again, you can submit them using the console. We're also obviously using either the hashtag #GLTrain or Socrata, where we're both monitoring all of those accounts. And then the format for today is I'm going to ask each of our presenters to go through, talk a little bit about their programs, sort of the way that they are using the platform to help solve some problems, and also to talk a little bit about their own performance management methodologies, and then opening it up for discussion. So without further ado, I would love to bring Reyna into the conversation. But actually, let me go quickly over the other participants so that you know who is here with us. So Reyna is going to be kicking us off from San Mateo County, but I'm also joined by our team from Kansas City, Kansas, Kate Bender and Julie Steenson. They're regulars in conversations with me in both webinars and also peers that I look to doing some of the most innovative work at the city level. And then Andrew Schwarm is also joining us, and he comes from the Office of Cook County Board President and is the Chief Performance Officer, and they have probably been to date our quickest implementers, and also doing some really fascinating work with the way that they are really challenging themselves to deliver information to the public in a much more interactive and usable way. So thanks again for everyone for joining us. And Reyna, I would love to turn it over to you and just get a little bit of background about what you're doing in San Mateo County, and then a demo of your site. And I'd love to just kind of dig in and have kind of a discussion of what you're doing.
Great. Thanks, Beth. And thanks for bringing us together. I remember when Beth was here last, I walked over to the train station. I said, it would be so great if we could have just a small group talk about how we're using GovStat. And I said, I've seen KC Stat, I've seen Cook County. It'd be great to bring us all together. Maybe a conference call, maybe like a WebEx, but certainly not a webinar with like hundreds of people. So I will do my best to show what we're doing here in San Mateo County, but I'm really looking forward to hearing Julie and Kate and Andrew talk about what they're doing in Kansas City and Cook County. So here in San Mateo County, briefly, our board has gone through a couple of visioning processes with the community. And the latest one they did was in 2012, where we actually asked the community to rank goals. And so based on the results of those goals, that priority setting process, our board approved 9 community impact goals for Shared Vision 2025. So I'm going to show you our Shared Vision dashboard in a little bit. Also in 2012, our voters passed a half-cent general sales tax here in San Mateo County, and that will generate about $70 million a year. So it really gave us the opportunity to look at tools like a dashboard to show the community what we were spending the money on, be very transparent about it, and to also base the decisions around how the money would be allocated on data and evidence that something will in fact work if we did invest money in it. So that led to us working with Socrata in 2013. So all of last year we got all of these things accomplished. We had an open data policy put in place from our county manager and our chief information officer. We launched our open data portal in August, as well as our open checkbook. And then the performance dashboards we launched in September. That was when our board adopted the budget along with the Measure A allocations. So this year is a really big year for us. Our board approved a 2-year budget so that we could focus this year, which is the off year, on getting our data and building our dashboards. So the first dashboard I'll show you is our Measure A dashboard, and then I'll go into a couple of the goals or a couple of initiatives, and then I'll show you our Shared Vision dashboard, which is what we're building right now. So I'm gonna.
While you're pulling that up, I do have a quick question, Reyna. I just one of the things a question that we hear a lot is, how is it that you get traction with leadership to actually make the hard decisions to be as open and transparent and to lead using data? And I wanted to know whether or not this was something that was hard for you to establish, or something that you had to work at, or is it, what was the role that leadership had in sort of determining your path forward, and how is it that you got the sort of the go ahead to be so bold, because you are really going out with very full disclosure of data and information down to some really fine details.
Yeah, I think with Measure A, with that passing, that really was the driver for us to jump into it and being able to show the results of where the money was going. And then there's also with the work around Shared Vision, it gets us all aligned to what is most important. And as we get more data, and I think that's the challenge, and I think the other panelists can say the same thing. It's the getting the data at a granular level so that you can actually use it to make decisions or to help you make decisions in the future. But for us here in San Mateo County, Measure A, and then also having this shared vision and priorities in place makes it a little bit easier for us. We have that context.
Great.
So I'm going to hit the play button here, and you should see our Measure A dashboard. Is that what everyone's seeing?
Yep.
Okay, great. So this is our Measure A dashboard. It has all of the 22 initiatives that were approved by our board last year. So
and this is a live dashboard on your website?
This is our live dashboard, yes. Go to performance.smcgov.org. So this is our live site. And I know I had issues with scrolling earlier. Let me go to the this other site here. Okay. All right. I have to go to the screenshot. So here's our Measure A dashboard. It has all of the proposals approved by our board according to the different community outcomes under our Shared Vision 2025 framework. And so what I'll do now is just go through a couple of these so that you can see the goals that we've built and the data that we have under each one. So the first one I'll go to is the fire vehicle maintenance costs. So here in the county we have an aging fire fleet of vehicles, and so we've allocated about $4 million of Measure A to replace the vehicles. This is the goal is to reduce maintenance costs, and then the data that was used to be able to communicate how old our fleet was. And this one is telling. Like the average vehicle age was greater than when it should have been replaced.
And so did you know this going into the decision making around how these Measure A dollars were going to be invested, or is this information that emerged after you started working with the data?
Well, this is the information that we use to be able to recommend funding with Measure A
and so
to our board.
So did you use the tool while you were going through that process of asking for the funding approvals and show, was the data part of that background that you were providing to the council to ensure that they were, getting their assurances that the investments were being made in the right places?
So we had the data, Beth. We didn't have the dashboard put together yet. So we had the data in our board report. The dashboard we put together after the proposals had gone to the board. But,
and then,
this is just the first year of Measure A, so we're planning to use it more to be able to communicate data to support future requests for Measure A funding.
And so, but the process as it works now, do you have this content that was built out on the dashboard? Was it a database administrator who built out this content, or was it a budget analyst?
So this was our team of budget policy and performance analysts with the help of Lilia at Socrata. So loading the data sets, creating the visualizations. So these are visualizations using the data that was submitted by our departments.
But your users are analysts. So you've got analysts that are connected to the process that are then just using the tools to sort of tell the story about how the funds are being used.
Right. Our entire budget policy and performance team has worked on this, and we're beginning to get departments working with the visualizations. Our departments actually entered in the updates. So we had our first quarterly update, which is this at the bottom here, and our analysts have trained our departments to go in and make their updates, and then also go into the data sets and provide any new data. So we're starting to get more users.
And that refreshes the content and allows you sort of get a more near-time view. And so is that something that you're thinking about sort of operationalizing, so that they'll start to really manage the data and the way that the data is surfaced up to the analyst level, and then the analysts will be able to sort of start depicting that data in these visualizations, but really the agencies will own that data ingestion process?
Yeah, we want our departments to own their goals and to own the data, and we're certainly there to support them as they create their visualizations moving forward. But for this first round, we actually went in and built it out, and the first time the departments actually were in here is to update, to do this quarterly update. But we are training everybody, and you'll see more users as far as putting in the data and providing updates. So yeah, we should be in a position to review what departments have submitted for future requests. Yeah,
one of the things that I hear a lot working with governments and working with sort of large bureaucracies is that there's a lot of pushback from the organization that, they get requests for their data all the time, and there's a little bit of fatigue on having to submit data for reporting. And so is the idea that you're sort of surfacing all the data into this common platform, and it can be used for the Measure A dashboard, but it then also can be used, if appropriate, for the open data work that you're doing or for the open checkbook. So is it the idea is that you're trying to create a flow of data sort of into one common platform and then just use that data sort of as an asset for all the data-driven work that you're doing?
Yeah, so this year a lot of the work is just getting a lot of data sets in from departments. So based on their performance measures and their goals now, any data that they have will be loaded into our open data portal, and then we should be able to grab those data sets to use in SMC Performance or GovStat to create these visualizations. So, we want this to be operationalized so that when departments come in and we talk about their budgets, they actually have their dashboards, and we'll have it up in the conference room, and we can talk about where the needs are. So it's a great tool to be able to show where the priorities should be and where we should be putting more resources. Right.
And do you think it's helping you figure out where the high-value data lives in your organization?
I think it's going to get better when we have more granular data. So that's really the stage we're at right now. Is we have a lot of high-level data, and we have data points, but unless you get really deep into the data, you can't really see where the priorities should be. So when I say that, you can see data at a community level, but you're not really going to see where the needs are until you start digging into actual neighborhoods and communities. So that's what we're working on. That's what we're working on right now. That's going to be a challenge. So we're trying to prioritize the measures and the indicators that we're going to target to be able to show where the gaps are in the county.
In the county. Great. Well, it's looking beautiful. I love it. I definitely hold it out there as an example, and I invite everyone who's joined us in the webinar in the audience to visit the site. Was there anything else that you wanted to show us?
Just one more real quick. So this next one is also Measure A funded. This is our Big Lift preschool initiative, and the goal for this, we allocated $10 million to this initiative, is to increase third grade reading proficiency from 55 to 80% in the county. So with GovStat, we were able to show which school districts were below the 80% reading proficiency level, and then we were also able to show where the school districts are in the county, and then how we compare it to the state. So another great use of the tool is to do benchmarking. If we can get regional, state, national benchmarks or goals or averages, it'll help us compare our performance to others. But this is another way. The maps, I think, are a great feature of the tool.
And benchmarking is such an interesting, it's such an interesting area, because I think particularly for those counties and cities, and even at the state level, I know I experienced this, there are no really good, great, hearty collections of performance benchmarks. And I would love to have a whole conversation on how it is. I think that there are pockets, and they are really sort of vertical driven. But I think that as these performance programs, whether you're doing performance stats or you're engaging in robust lean methodologies, or whether you're doing a delivery unit, I think you're going to be experiencing this desire to want to have normalized data so you can compare yourselves to other counties that have similar demographics or facing similar problems. And I'd love to get a conversation started, not just around sort of these common tools, but what are those common platforms that are required in order to start thinking about benchmarking. So I'll table it for another discussion, Reyna, but I may ask you to come back to talk about where you think we could grow around this benchmarking question. I think it's a really, really, really good use of the tool, but I think we're at a deficit in terms of government in our ability to actually benchmark in near real time without waiting for protracted, long lag sort of federal validation of some of our data. And I don't know, if you've experienced that same pain point, but it's something certainly that I experienced in Maryland.
Yeah, we're always looking for any reports that have been put out, whether it's foundations or state and national levels, where we can, grab a benchmark that we can use, right? Because there's our performance, and we need to be able to compare it to others. Or you can take just an average of the last few years and set that as, for now, what your benchmark is, and then you can adjust it in the future. But yeah, there's a lot of work we can still do in that area.
Yep. Well, thank you so much, and I hope you can hang around for questions. I'm sure there's going to be plenty. Before we go on to Kate and Julie, I did want to provide the responses from our last poll, and then ask one more poll question. So for those of you that are joining us in the webinar, for the first question, about 61% of you are responsible for creating performance reports. And when we get to Cook County specifically, we're going to talk a little bit more in depth around what reports look like and the challenge of reports and the challenge of the integration of live data into reports. And I'd love to do my next poll question before we move on. So that for the next poll question, for those of you that are tracking our poll questions, is at what level does your organization currently measure performance? And so we've got some options here. The first one is we don't have a performance measurement program in place. We're planning for a performance measurement program. We've obtained leadership support for performance measurement programs. We've prioritized departments, programs, or high-impact areas for goal setting. We've identified the necessary data sets that align with our goals. And the last option there is we regularly hold performance measurement review meetings with key constituents. So that's our poll question, and then I would love to jump right back in and talk with Team KC Stat Kansas City. Do you guys have your content up?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we do.
All right. So we are joined today. We're very fortunate to have Julie and Kate from Kansas City join us. Kate Bender is a senior analyst in the performance management program in the city manager's office in Kansas City. And Julie is also a senior analyst working in the city manager's office. And they have been working at really doing a phenomenal job storytelling their performance approach in Kansas City and the work that the mayor and the senior team is doing in the city to not only integrate citizen feedback into the work that they're doing, but also to sort of deliver it stories. So I'm going to hand it over to Kate and Julie to kind of walk us through how they're using the tool and their story, and then I'll have some questions as well.
All right. Well, thanks, Beth. This is Julie, and just welcome to everyone out there listening. Our story is very similar to San Mateo's in that really our GovStat powered product, KC Stat, which we call our dashboard, was also seeking to, or is also seeking to show progress on a set of community outcomes that were developed by the mayor's office and our city council and adopted by them. And I'll speak a little bit in a moment about how those council priorities converged with a couple of other initiatives that Kansas City was really getting into at the same time. So just a little background. We're really fortunate right now to have a extremely data-driven city manager, mayor, and city council who find data and the stories that data can tell to be just integral to the business of our government. We are co-located with our 311 call center, which has provided some of that rich, granular data that I know Reyna was talking about San Mateo lacking in, and I think that's been really some of also the basis of both our performance management program and our KC Stat program, just that we have some of that real raw operational data about citizen requests. So how we got here to this point was in November of 2009, the performance management program was started out of the city manager's office. It was really an internal-facing meeting of division managers, department directors to look at some of that granular data. And then when our Mayor Sly James asked for a public-facing component to that, we began our KC Stat meetings that really brought that data to the forefront. They're televised meetings based on PowerPoint presentations, and so at times it was hard to distill a lot of that, or it is for our citizens, into more of an at-a-glance kind of gut check mechanism, which is what we've used our KC Stat dashboard for. And as I said, we had the convergence of our council just adopting a set of 24 priorities, and then layering on top of that this past January, or actually January of 2013, a set of performance indicators, which are the indicators that you'll see as Kate goes in and demos our dashboard. That really provided the impetus for us to just move forward into the next just generation of transparency. It also was going on concurrently with a movement toward open data. And so you'll also see as Kate digs into the dashboard, we also have a lot of our visualizations, or some of them are being powered by our open data platform, so that if a citizen is interested in a specific topic, they're able to go to our dashboard, see the narrative around it, look at our charts, and then dig in further to the actual data that's underlying it. And I think, again, one of our rich sources for that is our 311 data. that can be curated on our dashboard. But then if someone is interested in digging into the data, creating apps off of our data, whatever, we have that based in our open data platform as well. So at this time, I will turn it over to Kate, and she can just start showing you how we have built this dashboard and some of our assumptions we've made as we have launched into this new initiative.
Okay, thanks, Julie. As she said, I'm just going to kind of walk through some of the nuts and bolts of our actual dashboard. If you're on here, if you're looking at my screen, and please let me know, anybody, if it's not resolving well. But each of those council priorities that Julie mentioned is represented by a separate tile, and those tiles are grouped based on community outcome areas. So we have 3 goals under public infrastructure, 4 under economic development, and so on. And if you scroll all the way down our page, you will see that not all of our goals are actually built out yet. We have sort of made the decision to kind of have it be a rolling launch, and it has taken a good amount of time to build each of these out to the point that they're telling the story that we want to tell. So we've decided to launch kind of bit by bit. So I'm going to walk us sort of through in detail some of our public infrastructure goals and some of the data that we have there. I will say that on this front page you can see that each goal has one indicator on the front as well as an assessment of the progress for that indicator. And obviously I would normally click on this, but I'm just going to pull it. I have it pulled up in a separate tab. That high-level indicator, actually you would think that might be the easy part, is to say here's the priority or here's the goal and here's the indicator. And our council did help us with that, mayor and council, when they adopted performance measures to specifically support their priorities. But it still required discussion for us to decide what is that top-level measure that we want to show as being representative of the priority and the progress that's being made. And really what we decided to do in most cases was really pick wherever possible, a high-level outcome-oriented indicator to represent that top-level measure. As you can see, in this case, that's citizen satisfaction, which is actually across several of our priorities, we use citizen satisfaction. So
can I just jump in for 1 second on that?
Yep,
so how hard
absolutely.
was it to get consensus on your top-level measures, and what did you have a process around it that you had to sort of vet those higher-level, I call them prevailing metrics or outcome measures, through your organization?
Well, as Julie said, we work pretty closely with the mayor's office. So we had sort of a work group around launching the dashboard where we kind of brainstormed internally and bounced ideas off each other. We also worked pretty closely with all of our departments who are supporting the underlying, providing and supporting the underlying data to kind of get their take on it as well. So it was a pretty collaborative process to decide on those measures. And as I said, we'd already really done the work on the front end, both for the council to come up with measures, and then we'd also, in the performance management program, had been, developed a lot of measurements that we've been tracking for some time. So we kind of had we had everything laid out. It was just a matter of pinpointing the ones that we thought should be that high level. And like I said, in a lot of cases, citizen satisfaction, you'll see that showing up again and again in our dashboard as a high-level measure, because we do consider that as our sort of gold standard outcome indicator. And
do you use specific technologies to collect citizen feedback, or are you, what's your methodology? Are they surveys that already exist and you're integrating that data, or how is it that you're surveying citizens?
Yes, we do an annual citizen survey. Actually, it's broken up into quarterly administration. So we do it 4 times a year and then aggregate the results up on an annual basis. So citizen survey to us is not only an annual reported out measure, but it's something we use throughout the year to support operational decisions, because we track the quarterly results as well and sort of see where those are headed. It's become, along with the 311 data, I think it's become one of our really key sources of data over the last few years. And one thing I would say too is that for all of these measures, I mean, for us, measurement is an evolutionary process. So they have I think all of our measures and our indicators have sort of evolved over time where we may have started with one thing and then over time both found that something else was telling this, more accurately telling the story, and also maybe we had new measurements, new capability added for some measurements.
Okay. And so I think it's really fascinating because I want to just emphasize the point you just made, which is that your citizen survey data has become one of your biggest data assets since you started doing performance management work. And I think that is something that I hope resonates with a lot of the people who are on the call today, because I think that not enough governments survey their citizens, and I think the hardest part about the citizen survey is what do you do with the information once you collect it. And one of the things I love about what Kansas City does is the reintegration of that data back into your work so that it's a citizen-informed approach to this open performance concept. And I really think that it's a critical point. I'm really glad that you made it. So I promise not to interrupt too much.
No problem. Yeah, well, no, we appreciate you calling that out, and we agree, absolutely. And I'll actually take the chance here to cross-promote and say I think we're actually working on a little case study document right now for ICMA about our use of citizen survey data. So that'll probably be out in the next month or two that kind of details more the way we approach that. Just going into some more of the details, as I said, our high-level measures, and we have our fancy Socrata engineered chart here that I think really does help tell the story here. We've got our actual graph that shows the line that shows the progress the data is made. We've got our trend line that shows kind of the direction that's going, and then the target line that shows where we need to be to get where we want to go up here at the 2015 target. The downside of using something like citizen satisfaction, a high-level outcome indicator in a lot of cases, is less frequent measures. And so even though we collect quarterly, we tend to really only assess performance or make conclusions about performance on an annual basis at the aggregate level. So here you can see we've been constant since last July because that was our last annual measurement. The other things I think I'd want to point out here is that the opportunity to build in narratives into the site was a huge benefit for us. We sort of see this as the way that we are moving from data visualizing to data storytelling. And so for that, in order to do that, we developed a consistent narrative structure for each of our priorities. And it starts with why is this a priority and how can we measure it. It kind of sets the stage. As you kind of move your way through our priorities, you'll see that in many cases they go from that high-level outcome measurement and they sort of dig in from there into more operational-oriented indicators. Here we have information about our capital dollars spent on street resurfacing, and then further into our street maintenance activities, which are more day-to-day reactive maintenance. And just from a visual standpoint, we have in here, we have photos, we have maps, just to kind of increase the visual appeal, keep people interested, and bring them into the story. At the bottom, we had to have our KC-Stat schedule, which again brings people out into the other ways to connect with this story, with this priority and what's going on with it, if they want to join the conversation or follow as we have our tweet along at these meetings, then this is a good place for them to connect. And I will also point out with our map here, this is an example of where we're connected to our open data portal. This data is hosted there, and so someone can click on explore the data here and end up on our open data portal where they can either look at the map, but then they can also actually delve into the line-by-line data of our 311 data set, which is very massive. But if they're interested, then they can have the opportunity to go in and manipulate that, obviously, through the open data portal, create their own visualizations, see where they want to go from there.
And but the analytics that you're powering out of both open data and also, so have you federated your data from open data into your GovStat?
Yes, we have.
Okay, so for those of you that aren't familiar with federation, so the idea is that, and a lot of our customers and users are doing this, they have their open data portal, it's federated into their GovStat, so they can call on any of the data that's available in open data, plus they can also pair that with their own data. But I did have one question about sort of analytics, and I know that you guys spend a lot of time refining your analytics because you do also use the same data as sort of the platform for your stat work. And so are you creating some of that analytic perspective and then pushing it out into other contexts? Are you using the analytic tools? I see that you're using a lot of GIS in your storytelling here, but in your reports and in the work that you're doing, are you able to leverage the fact that you have this common platform with all your data to help support some of the in-the-room work that you're doing with KCStat?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been a good platform, like you said, for bringing all those sort of varied sources of measurement together into one place and putting them all on the same page, to see side by side that, pothole repair is directly related to street resurfacing and, which in turn is related back to our citizen satisfaction, and the fact that we're putting dollars in there is related to the fact that we know that it's a high citizen priority. So I think that it does provide a sort of, like you said, that joint platform. And I know that since launching it, we've also had we've built this out to support the council priorities, but we've had a lot of our internal departments be interested in the reporting tool and how they can use that to even delve in further into their own metrics and track things either internally or externally that may be even more granular than the council priorities.
Excellent. Excellent. And so this is also a live site. I don't know, did you want to talk about the URL and get that out there so people can take a look at it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kcstat.kcmo.org. I think the last point I was just going to make about the site and something we've really tried to do is to really connect it back to the work of the city as a whole. This isn't a standalone just for these council priorities. The idea this is integrated in. This is a moving piece along with everything else the city is doing. And so we really make an effort to link it out to other resources that we have, either actually internal to the city or in some cases external, other organizations that are working on similar issues, other things that have been, if there have been reports written, things like that. And then in some cases, we have our interactive map of streets being paved, and then we also have here with potholes, we have a link to our service request application. So somebody can be on here reading about streets, and it draws, the idea is it's trying to draw citizens directly into, here is the part that citizens can play, both in absorbing this data and commenting on it, but also, there's a pothole outside your street. You can go right in and go ahead and make that request on the spot. So.
Right. So you're pairing that storytelling with actually action. So your call to action, here's the problem, we're trying to solve it, and then here's your opportunity to contribute in that solution. I think that's also a very powerful way of getting citizens engaged in a really proactive way at your key goals and priorities. That's great. Thanks for making that last point. All right. So we did have a poll question just before Kansas City started with their presentation. Thank you so much, Julie and Kate, and hopefully you two will stick around, and we already have some questions. So and so if we want to just pop the poll question back up. And for those of you that had the opportunity before, this is at what level does your organization currently measure performance? And then the poll results. I think we're still capturing some of the, there we go. Okay, so for those of you that are joining us today for the live webinar, most of you have are regularly holding performance measurement review meetings with key constituents. That's great news. That's music to my ears. I think that some of the most powerful work that I did in the state of Maryland was around the table. Was in those meetings where we were using data to drive a discussion around how we were going to hit our key outcomes. And the data was driving those discussions and not decision-making. But those meetings and having leadership engaged in those meetings, I think, is probably one of the most key and critical elements. I want to move now to Cook County. We have one more poll question, too. So let me do one more poll question, and then we're going to move to Cook County. So for the next poll question, what are the areas what areas are the highest priorities for your organization when it comes to measuring performance in 2014? And you can select all that apply. So you can take a moment to respond to the poll. And while you're still responding, I'd love to introduce Andy to everyone who's following along. Andrew Schwarm is the Chief Performance Officer, Office the Cook County Board President, Chicago, Illinois. And they are using technology to integrate with their STAR reports. And I'd love, if you don't mind, Andy, for you to give kind of a background of what STAR reports are and then talk a little bit about what you're doing in Cook County. That would be awesome. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Beth. And thank you for the other participants. It's been great to hear from what other counties and cities are doing with their performance management programs at the local level. And I heard a lot of the key themes that we are dealing with here in Cook County, in Chicago also. The performance management program was born right after President Preckwinkle took office. We passed an ordinance in January of 2011 that required each office and agency of Cook County to set goals and to start collecting operational data towards those goals. And we started out with pretty well a blank slate. And so then we spent the first 6 months to a year really setting the goals. And we've been publishing quarterly reports since mid-2011. To kind of pull up here, we faced a challenge at the very beginning, which is, the performance management ordinance that we passed had two components. One, it required the regular meetings that a lot of the other performance management leaders have talked about. We hold regular weekly meetings every Thursday from 1:30 to 3 with the leadership of the organization to kind of talk about what the goals are and to measure performance of presenting departments. But we also have a reporting requirement. And so we published a report every quarter in a PDF format on our website. And the report looks like this, and it looks very much like a government report, and it had a lot of wonderful information in it, but it was just really difficult, I think, for residents to kind of dig in. And if you weren't, performance management professional or someone that was really interested in government data, it was pretty dense to really digest our information in any usable way. Here I have an example of kind of what our old report was. And so we were looking for a tool that would allow us to take all this wonderful data that we're collecting. We collect right now and publish around 750 individual data points on a quarterly basis for over the 50 agencies or so of the county. And it's just a lot of information. We wanted to get it out there in a more usable, more open way. And so we launched our performance website, which is performance.cookcountyil.gov. And you can see here is the front part of our website once it gets done buffering. But the goal behind our launch was really to take a lot of the information that we had been collecting and reporting already and to translate it to a web-based format that was much more digestible for residents. So here's the front page of our website. It kind of lays out what our program is. And I want to delve in here first to one of our department reports. So the website is structured right now that each department of the county has a report page that lays out what the department does, what their mandates are, and then allows it to publish some of the key administrative data that we collect and we look at on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis. And then it also publishes the goals and the measures that each department thinks is important that we review in our Thursday sessions.
And
so
did the department, did the department make the suggestions? Were these part of a larger strategic planning effort?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we worked with departments over the first year of the administration to set these goals, and it's a very iterative process. So every quarter we work with departments to refine their measures, refine their goals, and what's coming out of it now, actually, as we enter the end of the president's term and we're looking towards the next 4 years, is thinking about how we can leverage some of this information to go through another strategic planning process and start thinking about what the next 4 years. So it's very much an iterative cycle that we're hopefully entering the next phase of as an administration to kind of think about what's next in terms of what are those high-level priorities.
Yeah, and so one of the things I think is important is that your iterative process includes often shedding goals too, that there may be performance metrics that were measured because they were important to getting an agency to a particular point, but you also, because I think a lot of performance programs, they're really good at adding measures, but not really good at doing a review and saying, you know what, we don't need to measure this. This is data that we're not impacting, or this is data that is no longer relevant for the problem that we're trying to solve. And so have you had those conversations with your agencies around not just, what to measure, but also what doesn't need to be measured?
That's exactly right. And so to give you an example, we do environmental inspections of industrial facilities in the suburbs. And one of the things that we focused on early on a couple of years ago was just in making sure that we got through all the inspections that we were supposed to, that we inspected 100% of the facilities that we were supposed to. And so our original goal that we focused on with the department was to get 100% of those inspections done. Now that for the last year and a half, they've demonstrated that they've gotten to 100% of the inspections. Now we're focused on the quality of the inspections and the outcomes of the inspections. So we try to use the process to, as we achieve things, think about what's next and what are really the outcomes that we're trying to drive towards. In the case of environmental control, it's to have a livable, sustainable county here in Cook County. How can we get there? What are the different components of getting there?
Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's great. So right now, the way our original focus on rolling out our external-facing site was on building these department pages. And so I pulled up the Department of Revenues, and each department has a data table that shows what data they're collecting, the performance over a period. We just show the last year, but there's a lot of other data behind it in the actual data set. And then we've, for each department page, have put some visualizations towards where they want to go and how they're doing. The next step for us, we've really focused right now on the department level and reporting out all of this information we're collecting and we're looking at. The next step for us is to really start connecting that to the overall strategic vision that the county has. And we have one area right now that we have on the front page of our site, which is in the finance and administration area. The real focus of our program at first has been kind of the blocking and the tackling of government management. It's getting those administrative things working properly, the human resources, the purchasing, the paying our invoices on time, those sorts of things. And I just wanted to highlight one goal that we have in that area. We've put a lot of focus on measuring our employee time and attendance, and we've used this tool and we've used the data that we collect that every time we meet with the department, we not only look at their internal goals, but we look at some of their administrative goals. So, what is your average sick time usage per employee per month as compared to the rest of the county, as compared to a national standard? And that's really helped us identify fraud and abuse, or also areas that, a lot of times it's just also identified bad data where we have key entry errors by timekeepers, or the data set in our comptroller's office isn't accurate, or in our payroll system isn't accurate. And so it's not just about improving performance, but it's also an iterative process of improving the data, which helps us make better decisions, which helps us manage better.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, because I think one of the things people don't necessarily always make the correlation between a robust performance management program and the ability to have an impact on the sort of enterprise of data or the asset of data in government. And I know that in Maryland, just the everyday routinized review of the data inherently improved the quality of the data that we were working with, and also prompted us to ask the right questions, so that when you were able to peel the onion and either unearth some golden nuggets of data that you didn't know existed that were really able to help inform what you're working on, but also some really bad data and some really bad decisions that were based on bad data that helped you get some visibility into how do you more rigorously evaluate data and the way that data and evidence is used in decision making. So it's a terrific point. We're very quickly running out of time, and I wanted to make sure that we got to some questions. And I'm going to go to one that that's for you, actually, Andy, since I have you. And so one of the questions that came in was about how the data is the data on the department pages getting into the system. Are you uploading it into Socrata or into a database, or are the agencies doing that? And so that was coming.
Yeah, so we had a big project this summer. It used to be that we would get Excel spreadsheets from departments, which we would type into an Access database, which we would print a report from that Access database. It was very, very time intensive. It took all of our analysts' time, every 3 months when we had to prepare the report to do this. So what we did is, it's really a two-step solution. We have a SharePoint site that acts as our main data collection portal. And from that SharePoint site, our departments go in, enter the data that's manual. We're building data feeds from source systems so we can have incident-level data. And then that data set is then pushed to Socrata and publishes it and updates it. And that automation has been fabulous for us. It's allowed us to use our time then as analysts and as project managers to actually improve the performance, instead of just collecting these 1,200 data points or what have you, and putting it manually back into another system. So it's been a very helpful process to automate it.
Great. And then we have a few other questions that have come across, and I think one of the ones for Kansas City is, how do you communicate back to the public that you've integrated their concern into the work that you're doing, but then is there a way that you're communicating back to the public outside of the site, or is there a way that you're bringing the site into those public arenas where you've sort of been doing citizen survey, so that they can see how their input has impacted the work that you're doing?
I would say that those KC-STAT sessions and the conversations we have at KC-STAT and around KC-STAT are sort of a central forum for those conversations. We talk about citizen survey a lot there, and we've shown the dashboard there. We kind of bring it all together. We also, in terms of the citizen survey, we actually are responsible. Our group is responsible for administering and reporting on that generally. Not just as it interacts with the dashboard and with the priorities. So we've also done a lot of communication around the citizen survey. So this year we actually did a big citizen-facing, almost like a public art type thing to really talk about our results, where we had a group of our employees all gather out on the lawn in front of City Hall and form a big +5 to represent some of our increases in one area. So we've thought a lot about the communication and engagement piece, and we're always looking for new tools to add in.
And I would also mention that one of the other ways last year that we incorporated our citizen survey data just into our overall communications effort is we sort of structured our citizen newsletter, which is an online publication and print kind of targeted to neighborhoods where they would like to receive it in a print form. And that just sort of helped communicate out both the results from the survey, but also then what we're doing either to improve that or what we did to help achieve those levels of satisfaction.
Okay. And Reyna, I know we're running out of time, but I want to definitely end with you, and I know that we have some poll results still. Maybe we can talk over the poll results. But Reyna, do you have questions for other people on the phone? Do you think that you got to see some interesting uses of the technology? And I'd love to get from you sort of, what do you think, how it's going, and then what do you think the next step for us should be?
Yeah, I definitely like the story with Casey's stats, the questions around why is this a priority and how can we measure it, and the pictures. I think as visual as you can get it, I think people really connect to images and pictures. So that's something that we really want to do here in San Mateo County as well. And then with Cook County and using SharePoint, I jotted that down, Andrew, to do your data collection first before you push it to Socrata. I mean, these are the things that operationally and then the way we communicate it, that we all need to do a better job. So those are a couple of things that I learned. Moving forward, for us anyway, we're working on department and program dashboards. So really getting our managers and supervisors much more involved in owning their data and actually using their data to manage on a day-to-day basis. I think that's a challenge all of us face, is just connecting individual contributions to these higher level community goals. So that's an ongoing process. Those are the lessons that we're continuing to learn here.
Great. Well, I just want to thank everybody. I've got one last poll question. You can see here that budget is at the top of mind for everybody, and I think as we all emerge into the new economy, that performance-based budgeting is going to be more and more of an issue that I'm going to be focused on in my work, and I certainly want to share these discussions, and I think should be a topic maybe the next time that we get together is how do you tie budget into this work that you're doing. And so look forward to that. A couple of things. We got a lot of questions. Thank you so much to everyone who participated on the phone. We have a ton of questions. If you go to the Socrata website, socrata.com, we're going to be blogging answers to your questions. So if you didn't get your questions answered today on live, try to integrate them in the questions that I was asking. But if I didn't get to your question, please watch our blog at socrata.com, and you'll be able to see some responses and answers to your questions. Again, you can also follow us or ask additional questions, and then you can tweet us at Socrata. And then our last and final poll question is whether or not you would like to see a more detailed demo. So I'm happy to do demos with you if you want to see some more of our tools, or maybe we can also set up a demo with some of the folks that are on the line. I know we got specific information. We also will be posting the links to all the sites that were demoed today on the Socrata blog, so you'll have the opportunity to see the live links. Everything that you saw is public. But there's also a whole world that happens underneath when you lift the hood of GovStat that we'll be happy to demo. So for our last poll question, I'd love for you to let us know if you'd be interested in getting a demo, and if you can pull that poll question up. And then we'll be sure to contact you if that's something that you're interested in. And then if there are any other questions that you would like for us to answer, again, you can tweet the hashtag #GLTrain or just at Socrata, and also my Twitter handle is at Beth Blauer. So if you have any questions or if there's anything else that you'd like us to sort of dive deep on. I always think it's going to be difficult to fill up the hour, but it goes by so fast. You guys did such a tremendous job. Thank you so much, San Mateo, Cook County, Kansas City. You guys are leaders, and I hope to see you all again very soon. And thanks so much for joining us today. And also, again, thanks to GovLoop for having us. And I look forward to having this next conversation, and hopefully it'll be focused on what I'm seeing as a clear winner here, which is the way that you're integrating your budget data into performance. So thanks very much.